The morning sun painted golden streaks across my modest 5-acre ranch, the dew still clinging to the grass as I made my way to the stables with feed buckets in hand. This had been my morning routine for the past 7 years since I purchased this slice of heaven on the outskirts of town. The property represented everything I had worked for throughout my adult life. It was not large or fancy by ranch standards, but it was mine, and it was home to my 4 beloved horses. Thunder, my black stallion, always greeted me first with a soft nicker. He was magnificent, 17 hands tall with a glossy coat that caught the sunlight like polished onyx. Many considered him intimidating with his powerful build and occasionally temperamental nature, but with me, he was gentle. Our bond had been forged through years of careful training, mutual respect, and countless hours together. The other horses, Luna, Daisy, and Old Rooster, were equally cherished members of my small equine family. The day everything began to change started like any other. I was brushing Thunder in the paddock when a moving truck rumbled down the adjacent road. The suburban development that had been slowly encroaching on this rural area for years had finally reached my doorstep. The house being built next door had been completed, and apparently, the new neighbors were arriving. I paused my grooming to watch as a silver SUV pulled into the driveway behind the moving truck. A woman emerged first. She was perhaps in her late 30s, with highlighted blonde hair cut in what I would later learn was called a speak-to-the-manager bob. 2 children, approximately 8 and 10 years old, spilled out of the vehicle next, followed by a man who appeared distracted by his phone. Being a good neighbor, I decided to introduce myself later that afternoon. I walked over with a basket of fresh eggs from my chickens and a homemade apple pie. The woman, who introduced herself as Karen Mitchell, seemed pleasant enough at first. Her smile was wide, her handshake firm, and her house already immaculately organized despite having just moved in hours earlier. "Those are your horses?" Karen asked, peering over my shoulder toward my property. "They are beautiful. My kids absolutely adore horses. They have been begging for riding lessons." "Thank you," I replied with a genuine smile. "I have had them for many years. It takes dedicated training to handle them properly, especially Thunder, my stallion." Something flickered in Karen's eyes then. Well, perhaps someday soon the children could come over and ride them. They would just love that. Her tone was casual, but something about the statement made me uncomfortable. Actually, horse riding requires proper instruction and safety equipment. My horses are not trained for beginners, especially not Thunder. He is quite particular about who handles him. Karen's smile remained fixed, but it no longer reached her eyes. "Oh, I am sure it cannot be that complicated. Children are natural with animals. My Aiden won a ribbon at a petting zoo contest last year." I explained patiently that horses were not petting zoo animals and required respect and proper handling. Karen nodded along, but I could tell she was merely tolerating my explanation rather than absorbing it. As I walked back to my property, I glanced back to see Karen standing on her newly built deck, watching Thunder gallop across the paddock. Her expression was one of assessment rather than admiration, as if she were mentally claiming something that did not belong to her. That night, as I closed the stables, an uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. Something told me the peaceful life I had built here was about to face a storm I had not prepared for. The first incident occurred just 3 days after the Mitchells moved in. I was in the barn cleaning stalls when I heard unfamiliar voices by the fence line. Setting down my pitchfork, I walked outside to find Karen standing with her 2 children, who were reaching through the fence to offer my horses what appeared to be pieces of bread and carrots. I quickened my pace, alarmed at what I was seeing. "Excuse me," I called out, keeping my voice even despite my concern. Please do not feed the horses. They are on specific diets and some foods can make them very sick." Karen turned to me with a look of innocent surprise that did not match the deliberate nature of her actions. "Oh, we were just giving them a little treat. The children wanted to say hello to them." I understand the children are curious, but horses require careful handling. Some foods like bread can cause serious digestive issues for them. I moved to check what Luna had consumed, gently steering her away from the fence. "They are just being kids," Karen replied dismissively. "And horses need treats sometimes. It makes them friendly." "I appreciate your interest in my animals," I explained, still maintaining a neighborly tone. "But these are not community horses. They are my personal pets and livelihood. I need to ask that you please not feed or interact with them without talking to me first." Karen's expression hardened slightly, her eyes narrowing. "Well, I think you are being a bit overprotective. It is not like we were hurting them." The children looked confused by the tension and I felt bad for them. They were innocent in this situation, simply following their mother's lead. It is not about being overprotective. It is about safety for both the horses and your children. Horses are powerful animals. Even friendly ones can be dangerous if startled or mishandled. Karen put her hands on her children's shoulders. "Come on, kids. Apparently, some people do not know how to share." She guided them away, but not before giving me a look that made it clear she found my boundaries unreasonable. The following week, I needed to drive into town for supplies. I was gone for approximately 3 hours. When I returned, something felt immediately wrong. The main gate to the pasture was not fully latched, not wide open, but not secured the way I always left it. Inside the stable, things were subtly out of place. A brush not hanging where I had left it. Hay scattered in patterns different from my morning routine. Most telling was Thunder's behavior. He was agitated, tossing his head and packing in his stall, unusual for the middle of the afternoon when he typically rested. As an experienced horse owner, I could read the signs. Someone had been here, disturbing my animals while I was away. That evening I walked next door. Karen answered wearing gardening gloves, her perfect yard clearly a point of pride. I decided to be direct. "Karen, did you or your family enter my property while I was in town today?" She hesitated just long enough to confirm my suspicions before answering. "The children really wanted to pet the horses. They have been asking non-stop. We were only there for a few minutes." My pulse quickened. "You entered my private property without permission. My gates were closed." "They were not locked," she countered as if that justified her actions. "And I thought, as neighbors, we should be able to enjoy each other's spaces. The children were very gentle. They just wanted to pet them." "Karen, I need to be absolutely clear. My property is not open to visitors without my explicit permission. These are not playground equipment or public amenities. They are living animals under my care, and some of them can be dangerous to people they do not know." Karen's friendly facade dropped completely. "I think you are being ridiculous. They are just neighborhood horses. My children have every right to enjoy the animals in their community." "They are not neighborhood horses. They are my personal property." I fought to keep my voice level. "Please respect that boundary going forward." "Or what?" Her tone took on a challenging edge. I did not take the bait. "I am just asking for basic respect of private property. That should not be controversial." That night, I installed security cameras at strategic points around my property, focusing on the gates, stable entrances, and paddock areas. Though part of me hoped Karen would respect my clear boundaries, the practical side knew this conflict was far from over. My ranch no longer felt like the peaceful sanctuary it had once been. Now it felt like a fortress under siege. with me as its sole defender. The following Saturday, I had arranged to visit a feed supplier 2 counties over to negotiate bulk pricing. It would mean being away from the ranch for most of the day. Before leaving, I checked that all gates were secure and the cameras were functioning properly. Something in my gut told me this extended absence might tempt Karen to cross boundaries again, but I needed those supplies. When I returned late that afternoon, everything appeared normal at first glance. The gates remained closed. The horses were grazing peacefully in the paddock. It was only when I sat down that evening to review the security footage, something I had started doing daily, that my world stopped spinning. The timestamp showed 11:42 a.m. Karen appeared at my property line with her 2 children in tow. She looked around furtively, checking if anyone was watching, before guiding her children toward the gate. She demonstrated a disturbing familiarity with the latch mechanism, suggesting this was not her first unauthorized entry. The children followed her excitedly as she led them directly to the stables. What I saw next made me physically ill. Karen confidently approached Thunder's stall, speaking to him as if they were old friends. She opened the stall door and let him out while her children watched in excitement. My hands began to shake as I watched Karen help her eldest son climb onto Thunder's bare back. No saddle, no helmet, no safety equipment whatsoever. The child, clearly inexperienced, gripped Thunder's mane while Karen took photos with her phone. Thunder, to his credit, remained surprisingly calm initially, though his ears flicked back and forth, a warning sign any experienced rider would recognize as discomfort. Karen then attempted to help her younger child mount as well, trying to place both children on Thunder's back simultaneously. That was when Thunder sidestepped sharply, nearly causing the first child to fall. The jerky movement appeared to startle Karen, who quickly helped her son down. Not to be deterred, she moved on to Luna, my most docile mare, repeating the process with both children. After approximately 20 minutes of this dangerous activity, they left, carefully closing gates behind them as if covering their tracks. I sat in stunned silence, replaying the footage several times. This was beyond trespassing. This was endangerment of my animals and her own children. One wrong move, one spooked horse, and those children could have been seriously injured or worse. And I, as the property owner, could potentially be held liable despite having taken no part in the dangerous activity. The next morning, I contacted the local police department to report the trespassing. The officer who took my statement was sympathetic but ultimately classified it as a civil matter. Post clear no trespassing signs, he advised. Document everything. If it continues, you can pursue a restraining order or civil action. With the security footage saved to multiple devices, I walked next door. This time, Karen's husband answered. I asked to speak with both of them. I have video evidence of your family trespassing on my property yesterday and placing your children on my horses without permission, I stated, getting straight to the point once we were all seated in their immaculate living room. Karen's husband looked genuinely shocked and turned to his wife. You did what? Karen's face flushed, but she quickly recovered. We just let the kids have a little fun. They have been begging for riding lessons, and your horses were just standing there doing nothing all day. Those horses are not trained for children, I explained, addressing her husband directly. Your children had no helmets, no supervision from someone who knows horses, and no permission to be on my property. Do you understand they could have been seriously injured? Oh, please, Karen interrupted before her husband could respond. You are just being selfish. Those beautiful animals should be enjoyed by everyone. Keeping them all to yourself is practically animal abuse. Her husband looked uncomfortable. Karen, if they are not our horses. This is exactly what is wrong with people today, Karen steamrolled over him. No sense of community or sharing. These are neighborhood animals. They are not neighborhood animals, I stated firmly. They are my personal property. This is my final warning before I pursue legal action. Stay off my property and away from my horses. Karen's expression shifted to something harder, more calculating. If you push this, I have friends on the local animal control board. It would be a shame if someone reported concerns about how many horses you are keeping on such a small property, or questions about their care. Investigations can be so disruptive, even when the allegations turn out to be false. Her threat hung in the air. She was actually threatening to file false reports if I pursued the trespassing issue. Looking at her husband's embarrassed expression, I could tell this was not the first time Karen had made such threats to get her way. I left their house with a clarity I had not possessed before. This was no longer about misunderstanding boundaries or neighborly disagreements. Karen had revealed herself as someone willing to lie and manipulate to get what she wanted, regardless of safety concerns or property rights. As I walked back to my ranch, my mind was already shifting from defense to strategy. It was time to protect what was mine by any legal means necessary. Monday morning found me in the wood-paneled office of Patricia Harmon, one of the few attorneys in the county specializing in equine law. Her credentials hung on the wall alongside photographs of her with various horses, a reassuring sign she understood the unique challenges I was facing. "So your neighbor let her children ride your horses without permission," Patricia summarized after reviewing my evidence. "And now she is threatening to make false reports if you pursue the matter." "Exactly," I confirmed, sliding over a USB drive containing the security footage. "I need to know my legal options here." Patricia leaned forward, her expression grave. "Let me be very clear about the liability issues here. If those children had been injured while trespassing on your property to ride your horses, you could still potentially be held liable under what is called attractive nuisance doctrine, even though you did not give permission." My stomach dropped. "But that is completely unfair. I have done everything to secure my property." "The law can be counterintuitive in these cases," she explained. "That is why documentation is crucial. These videos help establish that you took reasonable precautions and that the mother knowingly circumvented them. That shifts significant liability back to her." Patricia outlined a multi-step approach. First, send a certified cease and desist letter explicitly forbidding entry to my property. Second, post clear, visible no trespassing and liability warning signs. Third, upgrade physical barriers like locks and gates. Finally, maintain meticulous records of any further incidents. "What about her threats to file false reports about my animals?" I asked. "Document that conversation too. Write down exactly what was said while it is fresh in your memory. If false reports are filed, having that prior threat on record will be valuable." Patricia handed me her business card. "Call me immediately if animal control shows up. Do not speak to them without representation." I left her office with a folder of legal documents and a clearer understanding of my position. That afternoon, I researched local ordinances regarding livestock ownership, confirming that my property was properly zoned and my number of horses well within legal limits. I printed these regulations to keep on hand in case of an inspection. Over the next few days, I systematically strengthened my property's physical security. I installed keyed padlocks on all gates. I reinforced fencing at vulnerable points. I positioned additional security cameras to eliminate blind spots, with notices clearly indicating the property was under video surveillance. But my most important work happened in the quieter moments with Thunder. Each evening after completing my other tasks, I spent time with him in the training arena. Our sessions began with standard exercises to maintain our bond and trust. Then, gradually, I introduced something new. "You and I are going to teach someone an important lesson about boundaries," I murmured to him as I demonstrated a specific sequence of handling cues. Thunder, intelligent and attentive, watched my movements carefully. What I taught him was simple but effective. When someone who was not me used a specific approach to handle him, particularly the way Karen had been shown approaching him on the video, Thunder would respond with a very particular behavior. He would not buck violently or rear dangerously. Instead, he would produce an impressive display of flatulence combined with exaggerated sidestepping movements, harmless but extremely effective at creating distance between him and the unwanted handler. This natural behavior, which some horses do spontaneously when nervous, could be triggered on command through careful positive reinforcement training. It was completely harmless to Thunder. In fact, many veterinarians recommend allowing horses to move naturally when they need to expel gas rather than forcing them to suppress the behavior. To confirm the training approach was ethical and safe, I consulted with Dr. Martinez, my regular veterinarian. "You are basically capturing a natural behavior and putting it on cue," she confirmed after I demonstrated what I was teaching Thunder. "There is nothing harmful about this to the horse or to humans around him. It is actually quite clever behavioral training." As Thunder mastered the response, I felt a growing sense of calm determination replace my initial anger. If Karen chose to ignore all reasonable boundaries, legal warnings, and physical barriers to put her children on my horses again, at least now there would be natural consequences, embarrassing but completely safe ones, to her actions. With my legal preparations in place and Thunder's training progressing well, I moved to the next phase of my strategy. This was no longer just about defense. It was about creating a controlled scenario where Karen's behavior would be fully documented if she chose to trespass again. I began by installing highly visible "No Trespassing" and "Warning" property under 24-hour video surveillance signs along my entire property line. The signs were large, weather-resistant, and positioned every 50 feet, impossible to miss or claim ignorance of. I made certain the sign directly facing the Mitchell property was the largest and included specific language about liability for unauthorized entry. I also installed several obvious security cameras at gate entrances. These were in addition to my hidden cameras already recording from multiple angles. The visible cameras served dual purposes: actual surveillance and psychological deterrent. Based on Karen's previous behavior, I suspected that if she thought she had identified all the cameras, she might believe she could find blind spots to exploit. For 2 weeks, I maintained an extremely consistent schedule. I left the property at precisely 9:00 a.m. every Tuesday and Thursday, returning predictably at 2:00 p.m. This pattern was intentional, establishing a routine that Karen could observe and eventually be tempted to take advantage of. While building this predictable schedule, I continued Thunder's specialized training. By now, he had mastered the response to the specific handling cues. When approached by someone using Karen's distinctive pattern, approaching from the left side, patting his neck 3 times before attempting to guide him, Thunder would wait until someone attempted to mount him before letting loose his impressive display of flatulence accompanied by a specific side-to-side motion that would make staying seated nearly impossible for an inexperienced rider. The behavior was completely harmless but undeniably embarrassing for anyone involved. Most importantly, It would not frighten or harm a child beyond perhaps a bruised ego from sliding off onto the soft ground below. No one would be dragged, thrown, or trampled, just gently dislodged amid an unmistakable odor and sound. To verify the safety of this response, I invited Sarah, an experienced rider friend, to test the scenario. Approach him exactly as I have shown you, I instructed. Then try to mount him as if you were helping a child up. Sarah followed my instructions perfectly. The moment she made the mounting motion, Thunder performed his new trick flawlessly. Sarah burst into laughter as she stepped back. "That is incredible training," she admitted. "Effective but completely harmless. No one could possibly be hurt by that, but they certainly would not try it twice." The final piece of my setup came together when I identified the perfect day for what might be Karen's next trespassing attempt. The annual Regional Agricultural Supply Auction was happening the following Tuesday, an event I had attended every year. It would require me to be away from the ranch for at least 6 hours, a tempting window of opportunity for someone like Karen who had shown she was watching my schedule. The Monday before the auction, I made a point of mentioning my plans within earshot of Karen while speaking to another neighbor. "I will be gone all day tomorrow at the county ag auction," I said, just loud enough to carry across our adjoining yards. "It is the biggest one of the year, so I will probably be there from morning until late afternoon." That evening, I did a final check of all my security systems. The hidden cameras were functioning perfectly, with backup power sources and plenty of storage capacity. The locks on all gates were secure but showed subtle marks that I could check later to detect tampering. Thunder and the other horses were comfortable in their routines, unaware of the potential confrontation brewing. As dawn broke on Tuesday, I loaded several empty feed bins into my truck, a visible sign of my intention to make substantial purchases at the auction. I drove down my long driveway and turned onto the main road, making sure Karen could see my departure from her kitchen window where she typically had her morning coffee. However, instead of continuing to the auction, I drove to the end of the road, turned around, and took a rarely used back access road to my property. I parked my truck in a concealed spot behind the barn where it would not be visible from the Mitchell home. Then I settled into a comfortable position in my security monitoring room, screens showing every angle of my property. The trap was set. All the legal preparations were in place. The horses were safe. The cameras were rolling. Now it was just a matter of waiting to see if Karen would take the bait and provide the final evidence I needed to resolve this situation once and for all. The morning passed quietly. At 10:23 a.m., movement on my security monitors caught my attention. Karen appeared at her backyard fence, scanning my property methodically. She seemed to be verifying my absence, looking specifically toward the empty spot where my truck normally parked. After several minutes of observation, she disappeared back into her house. I maintained my position, watching the monitors patiently. Experience with horses had taught me the value of patience, of waiting for the right moment. At 11:46 a.m., the alert system pinged again. This time, Karen emerged from her house with both children in tow. They were dressed in what appeared to be brand new riding clothes, boots, jeans, and even small riding helmets. At least she had considered basic safety equipment this time, though it did nothing to mitigate the trespassing or unauthorized handling of my animals. Karen approached my property line cautiously, pointing out each visible security camera to her children. She then led them along the fence until they reached a section partially obscured by a large oak tree, exactly where the most discreet of my hidden cameras was positioned. With experienced precision, she lifted a section of the fence board that appeared secure, but that she had clearly tampered with previously, creating a passage large enough for them to slip through. My heart raced as I watched them make their way directly to the stables. Karen moved with disturbing confidence, navigating my property as if it were her own. She approached the padlocked main stable door, reached above the doorframe and felt around. My blood ran cold as I realized she must have observed me retrieving the spare key I sometimes kept hidden there for the farrier. I had changed the locks, but had not thought to remove the now obsolete spare key from its hiding place. Frustrated at this oversight but committed to my plan, I continued watching as Karen unlocked the stable door and ushered her excited children inside. The interior cameras activated, capturing their movements as they headed straight for Thunder's stall. Karen's posture exuded confidence as she unlatched his stall door and led him into the center aisle of the barn. "This big guy is named Thunder," I heard her tell her children through the audio feed. "He is the most beautiful one, so you should ride him first. We will take pictures to show Daddy." My jaw clenched as I watched her help her older son approach Thunder's left side. The child was clearly nervous but following his mother's instructions. Karen demonstrated exactly how to pat Thunder's neck, 3 distinct pats before attempting to guide him. It was the exact handling pattern I had conditioned Thunder to recognize as the signal for his special response. "Now, Aiden, I am going to help you climb up," Karen instructed, positioning her son. "Smile for a picture first." She pulled out her phone and took several photos of her son standing beside Thunder, who remained calm but alert, his ears moving in that subtle way that told me he recognized what was happening. Then, with alarming casualness, Karen positioned herself to boost her son onto Thunder's bare back. The moment Aiden's weight shifted onto Thunder's back, the stallion performed exactly as trained. First came the unmistakable sound, a series of loud, prolonged flatulent noises that echoed through the stable. Then came the signature side-to-side movement, a gentle but effective swaying that made it impossible for the inexperienced child to maintain his seat. Aiden slid off almost immediately, landing softly on the hay-covered floor with a look of absolute shock on his face. The younger child began laughing hysterically while Karen stood frozen, her expression transitioning from confusion to disgust as the powerful odor reached her. Thunder continued his performance, circling slowly while producing an impressive symphony of sounds and smells. The children covered their noses, the younger one still laughing while Aiden looked mortified. "What is wrong with this horse?" Karen exclaimed, pulling her children back. "He must be sick or something." Thunder approached them calmly, then let loose another round of his special talent, sending the 3 trespassers scrambling backward toward the stable door. "Gross, Mom, it stinks," the younger child cried, still giggling uncontrollably. Karen's face had turned crimson, a mix of embarrassment and anger. "Come on, children. This horse is clearly ill. We will try again another day with a different one." But Thunder followed them at a deliberate pace down the stable aisle, continuing his performance with remarkable consistency. Each time they tried to approach the door, he would maneuver to block their path momentarily, releasing another round of his special response. Finally, Karen managed to usher her children out of the stable, looking back in confusion and disgust at Thunder, who stood calmly watching them leave. His performance seemingly concluded now that they were exiting the building. "We are never coming back here again," I heard Karen declare as they hurried back toward their property. "That was the most disgusting thing I have ever seen. That woman does not take proper care of her animals." I could not help the smile that spread across my face as I watched them depart in undignified haste, squeezing back through the loose fence board. Thunder returned to his stall voluntarily, accepting a treat I had left hanging in a special container as reward for his perfect performance. The entire incident had lasted less than 15 minutes, but every moment was captured in high-definition video with clear audio from multiple angles. No one had been harmed. No laws had been broken on my part. And yet, I suspected that Karen and her children had learned a powerful lesson about respecting other people's animals and property. I sat back in my chair, immensely proud of Thunder's performance and relieved that my plan had worked exactly as intended. This was not just petty revenge. It was a calculated response to repeated boundary violations that put both my animals and trespassing children at risk. Now I had everything I needed to ensure this situation would be resolved permanently. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. Not 2 hours after the incident, while I was still reviewing the footage, Karen appeared at my property line. She had clearly been watching for my truck to return and had not realized I had never actually left. Her face was contorted with indignation as she shouted for me to come speak with her. I calmly collected my documentation folder and walked out to meet her, maintaining my position on my side of the property line. "How can I help you, Karen?" I asked, my voice steady. "Your horse traumatized my children today," she began without preamble. "That animal is sick and dangerous. My poor Aiden was nearly injured by that disgusting beast." I tilted my head slightly. "My horses? I am not sure what you mean. I have been gone all day at the auction." "Do not play dumb," she snapped. "Your stallion, Thunder, he is clearly ill and needs a vet, and he almost threw my son off his back." "Karen," I said calmly, "are you telling me that your children were on my property, handling my horses while I was away? After multiple conversations, legal notices, and clearly posted signs forbidding exactly that." Her righteous anger faltered slightly. "The children just wanted to see the horses. That is not the point. The point is your animal is sick and dangerous." "Actually, that is precisely the point." I opened my folder and removed the certified letter my attorney had prepared. "This is a formal notice from my lawyer detailing your repeated trespassing on my property and unauthorized handling of my animals. It includes timestamps and documentation of each incident, including today's." Karen's eyes widened. "You were recording us. That is invasion of privacy." "It is legal surveillance of my own private property, which you entered unlawfully," I corrected her. "The footage has been forwarded to my attorney and backed up to secure servers." I removed another document. "This letter explains the potential criminal charges of child endangerment that could be filed against you, not me, for placing your children on an unfamiliar horse without proper supervision or the owner's permission." Karen's face paled. "You would not dare." "I would prefer not to," I acknowledged. "Which is why the third document here offers an alternative resolution. A legally binding agreement that you will never again enter my property or allow your family members to do so without explicit written permission. In exchange, I will not pursue legal action regarding the previous incidents." Her eyes darted over the documents, the reality of her situation clearly sinking in. "This is ridiculous. If this went public, you would look like the villain for not helping children enjoy horses." "Would I?" I asked mildly. "Let us consider what the footage shows. A mother ignoring posted warnings, breaking into a locked stable, placing her children on an untacked horse without the owner present, all after repeated warnings about safety and property rights. I think most parents would be horrified by that behavior, not sympathetic to it." Karen fell silent, the calculation clear in her eyes. Any publicity would reveal her negligence, not my unreasonableness. 2 days later, Karen's husband came alone to return the signed agreement. "I want to apologize," he said quietly. "This was never appropriate behavior. The children have been told clearly that your property is off limits." At the neighborhood HOA meeting the following month, Karen attempted one last effort to paint me as the villain, suggesting that keeping dangerous animals in the neighborhood required additional regulation. Her proposal died quickly when I quietly distributed copies of our signed agreement to board members, along with still images from the security footage showing her trespassing. The resolution was not about revenge but establishing mutual respect for boundaries. Over time, Karen's family gave my property a wide berth. Occasionally, I would catch her children looking wistfully at the horses from their yard, and eventually, I extended a proper invitation for a supervised visit with appropriate safety measures in place. As I stood at the fence line with thunder one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I reflected on what this experience had taught me. Standing firm on boundaries was not selfish. It was necessary for safety, respect, and ultimately for genuine relationship building. Thunder nudged my shoulder gently as if reading my thoughts. "You were magnificent," I told him quietly, stroking his powerful neck. "A perfect gentleman, even while teaching an important lesson." And as new, permanent, private property signs gleamed in the fading light, I felt peace return to my small ranch. Some lessons are best taught not through anger or retaliation, but through allowing natural consequences to unfold, even if those consequences happen to come with rather dramatic sound effects.